Hello and welcome to C++ Weekly. I'm your host, Jason Turner. I'm available for code reviews, contracting, and on-site training. Now, this is episode number 3 in my game development project, and I am attempting to not do any programming at all that is outside of what you actually see on this video. So I wanted to go ahead and take a look at a few things where we last left off. So this is our last setup of our project here, where we have some number of states that we are keeping track of, and that is in fact our list of episodes here. So if I were to run this program right now, then I get this dialog box that's running in mGUI, and we can check off the plan, getting started, and finding errors as soon as possible. That was the episode from last week. This episode will be handling command line parameters. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Now, the first thing that I want to address, in each episode of this project, I want to make the code and the entire project a little bit better than it was previously. So right now I've got this incredibly long line that is 365 characters long. That is clearly uncalled for. Now, for the sake of actually organizing things on the screen here, let's just scroll over for the sake of our viewers. And this looks like about 120-ish characters fits well here. So I'm going to go ahead and my CMake format YAML file, which I was able to access by clicking over here on my CMake format file in my CLion tree. Now, just a reminder here that CLion is not sponsoring this project at all. It's just the editor that I am choosing to use for this project. So I'm going to set this line width here to 120. It was set to 0. I'm going to set it to 120. And I've also got some of these flags here that don't make any sense and additional commands and whatever set up in my CMake format. I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of those. Those are kind of placeholders for things that we might care about in the future. So if I save that and then we go back over here to our main.cbp, I can run the reformat code command and get something that's a little bit more readable. We could argue all day about what CMake format parameters we want. These are just the ones that I have set at the moment. But this gives us a nice clean way of easily reformatting the code whenever we do any large refactoring or anything. Now, the next thing that I want to take a look at before we look at command line parameters is this is bothering me since I recorded the last episode, that I can still get this count for the set of states out of sync with the number of steps that there are. So let's go ahead and try to fix this. And we have a couple of different options, and I'll show you maybe what I think makes sense here. So, how do we want to do this? I can do this. This is possible as of C++17. And I'm just saying this is an array. You deduce the types for me. So this is going to be an array of however many that is. And it's going to be of whatever type that is, which is going to be a const character pointer. And if I make this a constexpr array, then I can now tie this set of states This should be called steps. So now what I have is a set of steps, and whatever size they happen to be, this is going to be determined at compile time, and this is a constexpr thing, will then be used to build the number of states that I have. So I think I like this idea. The only problem that I have with it is now I can't use a simple ranged for loop here because I need the index of the state and the step going hand in hand here. So if I call this steps, now I have this problem. Well, I guess I don't really have a problem at this point because I am just incrementing into this index operator here, into this index value, and I'm asking for the next at the beginning of the state. So that's ugly. I'm using a standard array here. This should be cleaned up. I can just say that this is the could do something like this, but then I need to get the address of it. And then I get this error that I'm changing signedness from int to size t. Okay, so our tools are doing the right job for us here. It's, whether or not we like this is irrelevant. The fact remains that the index into a array is a size t. So let's go ahead and do that. We can do something like this. All the warnings go away. We're getting a suggestion that we use the @ instead from Clang Tidy, which is probably not a bad idea. And that would prevent us from the possibility of accidentally indexing past the end of this. Now, this has an implicit cost because this is going to be a runtime checked to make sure that we are indexing into this thing safely. And if it's not, then it's going to throw an exception. So we've tied these things together. I don't know, it's kind of irrelevant in a way. I'm going to make one little minor change here. So this is going to compile without warnings. We're not talking about performance critical code at the moment. So this should work. Now, the problem here, this isn't going to compile because I just tried to use a C++20 feature. So let's go ahead and see if we can go ahead and start enabling C++20 here. Now this is interface is CXXSTD17. Let's see what happens if I put 20 here. So this is going to automatically reload our CMake project. I've set that up in CLion. So any change to the CMake file should automatically reload it. So let's click over here on CMake. It looks like it did the right thing. And then we go back over to main. And I no longer get an error here. I do get this note that it seems that our static analysis is not quite up to step yet with what we are actually doing here in a C++20 feature. So if you're not familiar with this, I am creating a for init here. So this is the size t index, this section here. It's like the if init statements in C++17. So I'm declaring a variable that lives for the scope of the for loop, and then I am indexing into it here, and I am accessing it here. So we've got no warnings. We've got no possibility at all for the number of states that we have to be out of count with the number of steps that we have. And I need to kind of minimize a few things here with my fonts blown up. It is a little bit hard to see everything. So let's just get a couple things out of the way. And I think that that looks pretty good. It's definitely better than it was. And that's the goal that we're going to have for every episode, to make it at least a little bit better than it was. So here we go. This should run with no problem, even though we are getting an analysis warning here. Let's just verify. Yeah, no problem. Okay, so this is where we are. Now let's get to actually handling command line parameters. Now, if you're paying attention in previous episodes, you might have been frustrated with the fact that I was going in and manually changing this height and width and scale factors. So let's see if we can make those into command line parameters. Now at the moment, we've got this stuff commented out. This is our command line. And if you're not familiar with this, so this is the default example that is provided by DocOpt. And I am a novice user with DocOpt, so we're going to learn this together. Now, these are one of the many possible usage modes that we can have. We are only going to need one usage mode. And it needs to be just optional parameters that are the width, height, and scale factor. So I think it's going to look something like this. What did I name this executable? I called it game. Very creative of me. So that'll be called game. And then our options shall be, sure, why not? I'll leave version in here. Actually, no, it's Axe version for now. We want, actually, let's pull these back up. We need examples. We're not used to these. Okay. So this is a static context for raw string literal. This is this R quote open parenthesis. Now I've done an episode of C++ Weekly called Start Using Raw String Literals, and I still agree with that. These things are amazing for this kind of embedded text like this. Doing this without a raw string literal would be a major pain. Now we need to go back in and remove these things and uncomment this bit so we can actually correctly use doc_opt. And now again, another awesome use case here of our IDE is it's telling us the names of these parameters that we're passing to this doc_opt processor here. So that's great. And we can dump the arguments here. Now, you might not be surprised if I do this, because there's really no reason to use indel here. And we still have our speed log starting up. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if we can get out the width, height, and scale, and how these types work. So we're not going to get a built-in conversion. We want to get it as long. I wonder if const as int is an option. Okay, so we were able to do a quick inspection there, and it looks like doc_opt does not have built-in support for double, and or for int, it wants to be long or string or bool. So we're not going to worry about this yet for providing a floating point scale factor. We're going to do an integral scale factor at the moment, and we should be good here. Now we've got our width, height, and scale. Now we already had made the mistake down here of making these things magic numbers, and you can see again our analysis tool is telling us you're using magic numbers here. So you're right, we're using magic numbers. Let's stop doing that. Now, not very surprisingly, we're going to get implicit conversion, const long to unsigned int. Yeah, we are going to get that problem. So what do? We have to deal with the fact that right now our users could pass in an unsigned value. If they passed in, or a signed value, if they passed in -15 for the width, how do we want to deal with that? Do we want to put a check in here to make sure that they didn't put in that, or do we want to just static cast it to an unsigned value and deal with whatever kind of overflow, promotion, or whatever is going to happen? We need some sort of error handling. And look, we're only like 100 lines into this project, and we have all of these questions of how do we deal with the crazy things that our users could pass to us. So I think what we have to do is a little bit of sanity checking here. We also might need to look and see if doc_opt can do the sanity checking for us. All right, so looking through the documentation, I did not see any options for specifying a valid range of inputs for our parameters, so we're just going to have to do that ourselves real quick. Okay, so we've got some sort of sanity checking here, some sort of reasonable range, and then we now know that these things are all within the scale that we want. So I cannot do const expert auto down here anymore. Now, love it or hate it, this is the world that we're in at the moment. We are being very clear about the fact that we are doing a conversion here. We could have done the conversion above, up here, but if we had done it up here with a static cast, that wouldn't have given us the information that we needed to present to the user of the application. But then we end up with this ugliness down here. But, this is the kind of thing that's going to, on some level, you could take any amount of argument with me here about whether or not this is the right thing to do. But on some level, we could argue about where exactly the sanity checking should be put in. But this is also the kind of thing that's only going to have to happen when we've got user input. For the rest of the time, we can keep things sane ourselves by using the proper types consistently throughout the code, which is what I did down here when I used this size t for the index operation. And this is all nicely formatted at the moment, it looks like. And it looks like that we should be able to get some sort of user-defined width and height. So let's go ahead and build this. And I'm building this. I'm not going to run it through the debugger at the moment because I want to be able to actually set these parameters by hand. This should be where my binary went. And I'm using the integrated debugger here. Command line. There we go. So if I type help, then I get this help window. And it seems that I am getting an error from our doc_opt because the usage doesn't match the expected parameters. Let's go ahead and do that. because we don't have any predefined usage patterns that are different modes like Git has or something like that. And we're also novices at using doc-opt. So, this is what you get for following along with me on this project where I already said I am not a game developer and I'm using a bunch of tools that I've never tried before. So we are missing the usage string. Okay, so after looking through the doc-opt examples, it seems that we want something like this as just our default pattern. Go back to our terminal. We can get a help. Okay, so after a little bit of trial and error, we finally get to the crux of what we're really trying to do here. So I have this, I can type help and I'm going to get my help. I've got default scale factors and such. And if I want to, I can set the scale to 4. I can run it, the font gets ginormous, and we've got what we want. We finally have command line processing. And this is how things always go when you're using a new library that you've never used before. There's always this trial and error learning process. Even if you look at examples, you probably overlook something. So, that's what I've got. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit better though, because I've got speed log and I've got my lib format in here. So let's go ahead and do something like this. May as well make things easier to read and more beautiful if we can. So I say if the scale is greater than 5, then I should get an error here. We need to get rid of this. Illegal cast to string is actually bool. So it seems that we can't just convert anything that was given to us by doc-opt into a string, but that's okay. We can check to see if it was a string first, then we can do this debug dump, and then we can abort the program with proper logging and proper error handling here. Now, this makes me think that my episode coming up that says adding logging to our game, this one right here, maybe we won't end up doing something just like this. But I think we're doing okay. So let's go ahead and try this again. We try to do a scale of 6. We say command line options are out of reasonable range. We get what the width, the height, and the scale is. Very good. All right, so let's set the scale back to 2. Just for the fun of it, set some weird range here, and we can see what our current plan is. And we're going to check off episode 0, 1, 2, and 3. And I think episode 4 will still be C++ 20 so far, and then we'll get into reading input states and actually drawing input states on the screen. So this episode may be a little bit scattered, maybe a little bit random, but like I said, we're all learning on this together, and I'm going to check this in just a moment. This will be tagged as episode 3. So thank you for watching this episode of C++ Weekly. I hope you had some fun. Be sure to subscribe. Follow me as I continue to build on this. Each week, I'm going to try to make the code better than it was the week before.